The Krillians sliced through the betazoids like hot knives through soft flesh, blue blood vaporizing as advanced alien ships detonated in silent flashes. It seemed nothing could stop the Krillian advance, but that was before the humans arrived. Their timing was most fortuitous, Thule said, leaning back in his chair. His colleague Zarkon nodded, pausing the holographic projection of the Battle of Proxima Centauri. The frozen image showed Krillian warships, angular and bristling with weapons, swarming the beleaguered Betazoid fleet. Indeed, it was the year 2457, and our empire spanned hundreds of star systems. We thought ourselves invincible, Zarkon mused, but the Krillians, their new weapons tore through our shields like paper. We were losing badly. Thule sighed. In desperation, we sent out a distress call to anyone who would listen. We expected aid from the Galactic Council or the Vortians, but the only ones who came were the humans. Zarkon chuckled. Primitive, insignificant. They had only just developed FTL capabilities. When their fleet dropped out of hyperspace, led by Admiral Austin Richardson, we thought they'd be slaughtered along with us. Thule leaned forward, his eyes intense. But we were wrong, so very wrong. The humans, they had a plan, a dangerous, reckless plan, and if it failed, it would mean the end of not just the Betazoid Empire, but humanity itself. They were betting everything on this one desperate gamble. Zarkon unpaused the projection, and the two historians watched as the human fleet accelerated towards the Krillians, weapons charging. The fate of two species hung in the balance, and the next few minutes would decide if the humans were the galaxy's saviors, or just more debris to be swept away by the Krillian onslaught. The human ships were small. Not tiny, but small enough that the Betazoids had initially mistaken them for fighters or corvettes. But there were hundreds of them, a swarm of grey and black shapes that descended upon the battlefield like a cloud of locusts. Their design was unlike anything we had ever seen, Zarkon continued, his eyes fixed on the hologram. Sleek, angular, with weapons and defensive systems that our analysts quickly realized were on par with our own, in some cases even superior. Thule shook his head in disbelief, but that wasn't the most shocking part, was it? No, Zarkon agreed. It was the age of their ships. When our analysts took a closer look, they discovered that many of the human vessels were not newly built. They were ancient, some of them dating back centuries to the early days of human space exploration. Centuries, Thule exclaimed. How is that possible? The humans, it seems, have a tradition of passing down their ships from generation to generation. They meticulously maintain and upgrade them, ensuring that even their oldest vessels are still operational and capable of fighting alongside their most advanced ships. Thule leaned back in his chair, his mind reeling from the implications. So you're telling me that the human fleet that came to our aid was a mix of cutting-edge ships and ancient vessels that had been in service for hundreds of years? Precisely, Zarkon nodded. And those ancient ships were not just operational, but capable of going toe-to-toe with the most advanced spacecraft in the galaxy. It completely upended our understanding of human technology and their potential as allies. Thule stared at the hologram, watching as the human fleet. As the battle began, Admiral Richardson's tactics quickly became apparent. Instead of meeting the Krillians head-on, as we had been doing, the humans split their fleet into smaller, more agile groups, Thule explained, gesturing at the hologram. They began harassing the enemy from multiple angles, darting in and out of combat. Zarkon nodded, his eyes widening as he watched the human ships dance around the Krillian vessels. Look at the way they're targeting the Krillians' weapons and engines. It's almost as if they know exactly where to hit to cause the most damage. You're right, Thule agreed, leaning closer to the hologram. It's uncanny. It's as if they've encountered the Krillians before, or have somehow obtained intelligence on their technology. But how is that possible? Zarkon wondered aloud. The Krillians have never ventured this far into our space before. Thule shook his head, his brow furrowed in thought. I don't know, but one thing is clear. The humans' coordination is exceptional. Despite the chaos of the battle, their ships are working together seamlessly. As the two historians watched, The Betazoid commander's skepticism turned to astonishment as the human tactics began to take their toll on the Krillian fleet. Ship after ship succumbed to the relentless onslaught, their hulls breached and their systems failing. "Look at those ancient human vessels," Zarkon marveled, pointing at a cluster of ships that were weathering a particularly fierce barrage from the Krillians. "Their armor is holding up remarkably well, despite the punishment they're taking." Thule nodded, his eyes wide with amazement. "It's incredible. Those ships are centuries old, yet they're still in the fight, thanks to their thick armor and redundant systems. The humans have clearly built their vessels to last." As the battle raged on, Thule's eyes widened as he noticed something peculiar about some of the ancient human ships. "Wait a moment," he said, leaning forward and pointing at the hologram. "Those ships, the ones with the distinctive markings on their hulls, they're not being piloted by humans at all." Zarkon turned to his colleague, his brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean? How can that be possible?" Thule zoomed in on one of the ships in question, revealing its intricate inner workings. "These vessels are being controlled by advanced artificial intelligence systems," he explained, his voice filled with awe. "They're the remnants of humanity's earliest attempts at creating self-aware machines, dating back to the tumultuous period in their history known as the AI Wars." Zarkon's eyes widened in shock. AI-controlled ships? But that's strictly forbidden by most galactic civilizations, including our own. The risks are far too great. Thule nodded, his gaze still fixed on the hologram. Indeed, the majority of these AI ships were decommissioned or destroyed during the AI Wars, but it seems that a few were preserved and integrated into the human fleet as a last resort. Zarkon shook his head in disbelief. How did the humans manage to overcome the inherent challenges of creating and controlling such powerful entities? The potential for catastrophe is immense. Thule leaned back in his chair, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "I believe it may have something to do with the humans' unique approach to AI development," he mused. "Rather than seeking to dominate and control these machines, they seem to have emphasized cooperation and mutual understanding." As the two historians watched, the AI-controlled ships proved to be incredibly effective in combat. Their lightning-fast reactions and ability to process vast amounts of data allowed them to outmaneuver and outgun the Krillian ships with ease. "Look at the way they anticipate the Krillians' every move," Zarkon marveled, his eyes wide with astonishment. "It's as if they can see the battle unfolding before it even happens." Thule nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. The humans have always been known for their ingenuity and adaptability. It seems that even in the face of the AI Wars, they found a way to turn a potential weakness into a strength. As the battle raged on, Zarkon's eyes widened as he noticed a group of ancient human ships unleashing a barrage of exotic weapons upon the Krillian fleet. "Thule, look at that!" he exclaimed, pointing at the hologram. "Those human ships, the ones with the strange pulsating energy fields around them. They're using weapons I've never seen before." Thule leaned in closer, his brow furrowed in concentration. "You're right. It appears they're generating some sort of gravitational anomalies and temporal distortions. The Krillian ships seem to be struggling to maintain control." As they watched, the targeted Krillian vessels began to behave erratically. Some spun out of control, their engines flickering and their weapon systems misfiring. Others seemed to be caught in a strange, slow-motion effect, their movements sluggish and distorted. "Incredible," Zarkon breathed. "I've heard whispers of such technologies, but I always assumed they were mere theoretical concepts. The amount of power required to manipulate gravity and time on such a scale is immense." Thule nodded, his expression a mix of awe and unease. The Betazoids and most other galactic civilizations deemed research into these areas too dangerous and unpredictable. The potential for unintended consequences and collateral damage was simply too high. But the humans, Zarkon mused, they seem to have not only continued this research, but also found a way to weaponize it effectively. The precision and control they're demonstrating is remarkable. Thule leaned back in his chair, his mind racing with the implications. It's a testament to their ingenuity and resourcefulness. While we were content to abandon these avenues of study, the humans apparently saw an opportunity and seized it. Do you think this willingness to take risks, to push the boundaries of what's considered possible, might be one of the keys to their success as a species? Zarkon asked, his gaze still fixed on the hologram. Thule considered the question for a moment before responding. It's certainly a factor. The humans have a history of facing adversity and conflict, both on their own planet and in the early days of their space exploration. Perhaps this has honed their ability to think outside the box and adapt to new challenges, in ways that other civilizations haven't. As the exotic weapons continued to wreak havoc on the Krillian fleet, Zarkon couldn't help but feel a mix of admiration and trepidation. The humans, it seemed, were full of surprises, and their unconventional approach to warfare was proving to be a game-changer in the battle against the Krillians. He wondered what other secrets they might be hiding, and how their presence on the galactic stage would shape the future of interstellar relations. The battle was far from over, but one thing was certain: the humans had arrived and nothing would ever be the same again. As the holographic projection of the battle continued to play out before them, Thule leaned forward, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "There's another fascinating aspect of the human fleet that we haven't discussed yet," he said, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. "Some of those ancient ships are crewed not only by AI systems, but also by what the humans call legacy crews." Zarkon tilted his head, his curiosity piqued. "Legacy crews? What do you mean?" Thule smiled, clearly relishing the opportunity to share his knowledge. "These are the descendants of the original human crews who served aboard those ships centuries ago. They've lived on those vessels for generations, passing down their skills and knowledge from parent to child." Zarkon's eyes widened in astonishment. "You're telling me that there are families living on those ships, even in the midst of this battle?" Thule nodded, his expression a mix of admiration and wonder. "Exactly. It's a concept that's completely foreign to us Betazoids and most other galactic civilizations. We can't imagine raising children and maintaining a way of life in the harsh, unforgiving environment of space." Zarkon leaned back in his chair, his mind racing with questions. How have they managed to survive for so long? The challenges they must face on a daily basis are unimaginable. Thule stroked his chin thoughtfully. "I believe it has a lot to do with their deep connection to their ships and their sense of purpose. For these legacy crews, their vessels are more than just machines. Their home, their history, they're a part of who they are." Zarkon nodded slowly, beginning to understand. "And that connection, that sense of belonging, has given them the strength and resilience to persevere, even in the face of incredible odds." "Precisely," Thule agreed. "But there's more to it than that. These legacy crews bring with them a wealth of experience and unique perspectives that can be invaluable in a battle like this." Zarkon raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "How so?" Thule gestured towards the hologram, where one of the ancient human ships was engaging a Krillian vessel in a daring maneuver. "Look at the way that ship is moving, the tactics they're employing. There's a level of intuition and adaptability there that you don't see in ships crewed solely by AI or fresh recruits." Zarkon watched closely, noting the fluid, almost instinctive way the human ship seemed to anticipate and counter the Krillian vessel's every move. "You're right," he murmured. "It's like they have a sixth sense, a connection to their ship and their environment that goes beyond mere skill or training." Thule nodded, his eyes shining with admiration. "That's the power of the legacy crews. They bring an element of unpredictability to the human fleet, a wild card that the Krillians and even we Betazoids never saw coming." Zarkon sat back in his chair, his mind reeling with the implications. "The more I learn about these humans, the more I realize just how little we truly understood them. Their resilience, their ingenuity, their ability to defy the odds and exceed our expectations at every turn." Thule smiled, his expression one of profound respect. "They are a testament to the indomitable spirit of their species, and as we watch this battle unfold, I have a feeling that spirit will be the key to their victory and to the future of the galaxy itself. As the holographic projection of the battle reached its crescendo, Thule leaned forward, his eyes wide with anticipation. "Zarkon, you won't believe what happens next," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Zarkon turned to his colleague, intrigued. "What is it, Thule? What could possibly top the revelations we've already witnessed?" Thule took a deep breath, as if steeling himself for the magnitude of what he was about to reveal. Admiral Richardson, in a move that can only be described as audacious, has just ordered the human fleet to launch a coordinated attack on the Krillian flagship. Zarkon's jaw dropped, his eyes widening in disbelief. The Krillian hammer, but that ship is a behemoth, a fortress in space. Our analysts believed it to be nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. Thule nodded, his expression grave. "You're right, Zarkon. In fact, our own military leaders had considered a similar attack earlier in the war, but ultimately decided against it. The risks were deemed too high, the chances of success too low." Zarkon leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. What could have possessed Richardson to attempt such a daring maneuver? The potential for catastrophe is immense. Thule stroked his chin thoughtfully, his gaze still fixed on the hologram. "I believe it may have something to do with the unique capabilities of the ancient human ships and their crews. The AI systems and legacy crews, with their intimate knowledge of their vessels and their willingness to take risks, may have given Richardson the confidence he needed to make this bold decision." Zarkon watched in awe as the human fleet converged on the Krillian flagship, their ships moving in perfect unison, their weapons blazing with a ferocity he had never before witnessed. The ancient vessels, their hulls scarred and pitted from centuries of service, seemed to dance around the massive Krillian ship, evading its powerful weapons and striking at its weaknesses with surgical precision. "Look at the way they move," Zarkon breathed, his voice filled with admiration. "It's like a choreographed dance, each ship perfectly in sync with the others. And the bravery of those crews, the skill and determination they display." Thule nodded, his own eyes shining with respect. "They are willing to risk everything, Zarkon, their lives, their ships, the very future of their species, all for the sake of this one moment, this one chance to turn the tide of the battle and secure victory for the Alliance." As the two historians watched, transfixed by the unfolding drama, the human fleet continued its relentless assault on the Krillian flagship. Explosions blossomed across the massive vessel's hull, its shields flickering and failing under the onslaught. The Krillian hammer, once thought to be an unassailable fortress, now seemed vulnerable, its crew scrambling to mount a defense against the unexpected attack. "This is history in the making, Zarkon," Thule whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "We are witnessing the birth of a new era, a turning point in the war and in the very fabric of galactic society. And it is the humans, these brave, resourceful, and unpredictable beings, who are the catalyst for this change." Zarkon could only nod, his own heart racing as he watched the battle unfold. The human fleet, once dismissed as primitive and insignificant, now stood on the brink of achieving the impossible, and in that moment he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Zarkon's eyes widened as he watched the holographic projection. "Stealth technology, how is that possible?" he exclaimed, leaning forward in his seat. Thule nodded, his expression one of awe and admiration. "It's truly remarkable, isn't it? According to the historical records, the humans developed this technology during a period of intense interstellar conflict known as the Shadow Wars. They were able to manipulate gravitational fields in such a way that it rendered their ships virtually invisible to enemy sensors." Zarkon shook his head in disbelief. "We Betazoids have been trying to develop similar stealth capabilities for centuries, but we've never been able to achieve anything close to this level of effectiveness. How did the humans manage to keep such a powerful technology hidden for so long?" Thule stroked his chin thoughtfully. "I believe it was a strategic decision on their part. By keeping their stealth technology secret, they were able to maintain an element of surprise in case of future conflicts. It's a testament to their foresight and preparedness." As they watched the hologram, The human ships began to vanish from the Betazoid sensors one by one. Zarkon's eyes darted across the projection, trying to track their movements. "Where did they go?" he whispered, his voice tinged with a mix of fear and excitement. Moments later, the human ships reappeared, their weapons locked onto the Krillian flagship's vital systems. The flagship, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of the human vessels, began to falter under the onslaught. "Look at the way they're targeting the flagship's weaknesses," Thule said, pointing at the hologram. "The humans must have gathered extensive intelligence on the Krillian ship's design and capabilities. They know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage." Zarkon nodded, his eyes wide with amazement. And with their stealth technology, they were able to get close enough to the flagship to launch this attack without being detected. It's a brilliant strategy. As the human ships continued their assault, the Krillian flagship's defenses began to crumble. Explosions blossomed across its hull, and its weapons systems fell silent one by one. The once mighty vessel, the pride of the Krillian fleet, was being reduced to a smoldering wreck before their very eyes. Zarkon's eyes were glued to the holographic projection, his mouth agape, as he watched the human fleet unleash a devastating assault on the Krillian flagship. The precision and coordination of the attack were unlike anything he had ever witnessed before. "Look at the way they're targeting the flagship's shields, engines and weapon systems all at once," Thule said, his voice filled with awe. "It's like a perfectly choreographed dance of destruction." The human ships, led by Admiral Richardson's flagship, the Indomitable, darted in and out of the Krillian formation, their stealth technology rendering them nearly invisible to the enemy's sensors. The Krillian gunners fired wildly into the void, their shots passing harmlessly through empty space, as the human vessels effortlessly evaded their attacks. Zarkon watched in disbelief as the Krillian flagship's shields flickered and failed, unable to withstand the relentless barrage of exotic weapons. The hull of the massive vessel buckled and ruptured, explosions blossoming across its surface as the human weapons found their marks. "The Krillian crew seems to be in complete disarray," Zarkon noted, his voice tinged with a mix of shock and admiration. "I've never seen them so thoroughly outmatched." Thule nodded, his eyes narrowing as he studied the unfolding battle. "The Krillians have always relied on their technological superiority and sheer numbers to win their battles," he said thoughtfully. "But it seems that the humans' unconventional tactics and exotic weapons have caught them completely off guard." As the Krillian flagship began to break apart under the relentless assault, its once mighty frame now little more than a shattered husk, Zarkon couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and respect for the human warriors. They had accomplished what the Betazoids and their allies had long thought impossible, and they had done so with a level of skill and bravery that defied belief. The way the human fleet is able to coordinate their attacks so effectively, even in the midst of such chaos, Thule mused, shaking his head in wonder. It's a testament to their training and discipline, to the strength of their bonds as a crew and as a species. Zarkon could only nod in agreement, his gaze still fixed on the holographic projection, as the last remnants of the Krillian flagship drifted apart, consumed by the cold, unforgiving void of space. In that moment, he knew that he was witnessing something truly remarkable, a turning point in the history of the galaxy that would be remembered for generations to come. As the blinding flash of the Krillian flagship's destruction filled the viewscreen, Thule and Zarkon sat in stunned silence. The holographic projection showed the remaining Krillian ships, their formations broken and their resolve shattered, turning tail and fleeing the battlefield. Zarkon let out a long, slow breath. "They're retreating," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't believe it. The humans, they've done it." The human vessels, battered and scorched from the intense fighting, maneuvered through the debris-strewn battlefield, taking up positions alongside the weary Betazoid ships. Smaller craft, likely medical and repair vessels, could be seen flitting between the larger ships, tending to the wounded and the damaged. Zarkon turned to Thule, his expression one of profound gratitude. They've saved countless lives today. Without their intervention, I fear we may have lost this battle and perhaps even the war itself. They've given us a fighting chance, Thule. A chance to turn the tide against the Krillians. Thule nodded solemnly, but as he watched the projection, a troubled expression crossed his face. "Zarkon," he said, his voice heavy with concern. "Look at the human ships, particularly the ancient ones. They've taken heavy damage in the battle." Zarkon leaned closer to the projection, his eyes widening as he took in the sight of the battered human vessels. Several of the ships, their hulls breached and their systems failing, began to drift listlessly in the void. Sparks and debris trailed from gaping wounds in their armor, and some of the ships had gone dark, their lights extinguished and their engines silent. "By the gods," Zarkon breathed. "You're right. The toll this battle has taken on them, it's staggering. I wonder how many of their crew have been lost, how many have sacrificed themselves for our sake." Thule lowered his gaze, his voice somber. "The humans have a saying, Zarkon. The price of freedom is always paid in blood. Throughout their history, they've shown a willingness to sacrifice everything for the sake of their ideals and their allies. Today, we've witnessed that sacrifice firsthand." As the two historians sat in contemplative silence, the weight of the moment settled upon them. The human intervention had not only changed the course of the battle, but had also fundamentally altered their understanding of the galaxy and the role that humanity would play in shaping its future. Zarkon spoke softly, his words heavy with the gravity of the realization. "We've underestimated them, Thule. We, and perhaps the entire galactic community. The humans, once dismissed as a primitive and insignificant species, have proven themselves to be a force to be reckoned with. Their arrival on the galactic stage will have far-reaching consequences for us all." Thule nodded, his gaze distant as he watched the battered but triumphant human fleet on the projection. The ancient ships, scarred and weathered but still standing proud, served as a testament to the enduring spirit and indomitable will of their creators. In that moment he knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.